Hey, Marisa, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to chat. Why don't we just start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, totally. So I am a copy coach and a copy expert, and I help coaches and creatives discover what to say and how to say it to magnetically attract your dream clients, and apply all of those like drool worthy words to your website, to your emails, to your sales pages, and, attract your audience without sounding like a used car salesman is
Very
basically how I
cool.
describe it.
So that's what you do. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so weird for me is that I started off as an actor. So I got my MFA from acting at Harvard.
What's MFA?
MFA stands for a Master's of Fine Arts.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's the highest performing arts degree you can receive.
Cool.
So as an actor, I made my way back to New York. I now had an agent, a manager, and I couldn't really go back to kind of my side gigs, waitressing or nannying. I needed to kind of be available for auditions. So a friend of mine mentioned, hey, because I did have a writing background in undergrad and I had helped some of my grad school friends, do some writing. And she said, there's this online like world and you can write for people online. And I was like, what is this? So I thought, okay, well, I'll have the freedom to audition. So the first client I ever had, she was an online coach and she asked me to write a JV packet for her. And I said, oh yeah, sure. I'd love to. I had no idea what it was. And I said, would you just send me one that you like so that I can get an idea? And that's kind of how I learned to be a copywriter. What I realized was the JV packet stood for joint venture. I was writing an affiliate packet. And
Uh-huh.
that's kind of how I learned. And so every client I got, I would just kind of build on what I'd learned before. And that's how I got into it. That's how I started.
Very
Yeah.
cool. What would you say your superpower is?
Gosh, what a question, Rachel. I would say my superpower is storytelling. I think I'm a really fantastic storyteller, and
Mhm.
my ability to take what seems like just an everyday kind of passing moment and turn it into something that can connect back to your business. And that's what I teach my students to do, which is to
Teach
how do you
us. Teach
take
us. How do we do this?
yeah, it comes from the actor world actually. So a lot of everything that I teach as a copy coach all comes from the acting world. It's like an actor's guide to copy, basically. So in the acting world, you have these what they're called slice of life moments.
Mhm.
So you think of whatever character you're playing on stage, but you think of her not in that particular scene, but what is she doing like in her everyday life? Going to the grocery store, striking up a conversation. Those are called slice of life moments. So I ask my students how to uncover your slice of life moments. So you're in Target and you strike up a conversation with somebody. You talk to the barista at Starbucks and something happens. You hear a song on the radio that reminds you of something. Those are all those slice of life moments that you then can document. I like to just keep them nothing fancy on my phone, just in a little notepad. And so when I sit down to write an email, I have all these story prompts to
Mhm.
already get me in, as opposed to just kind of sitting in front of a blank Google Doc, like, what will I write about today?
Totally. Can you give
Yeah.
us an example of like how you would weave in like a slice of life moment into like a sales letter or something like that?
Yeah, totally. So this is one that I did recently, actually. So back at Christmas, my friend Elizabeth and I were going back and forth on Instagram about Christmas movies. And I said, oh, have you seen Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell? It's so good. It's on Netflix. She said, no, I don't do any new Christmas movies. The last Santa Claus for me was Tim Allen. That's it. And I was like, no, you have to watch it. You have to watch it. So 2 days later, she, DMs me and she says, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with Kurt Russell's Santa Claus. It's so good. I love this movie. Thank you for pushing me to watch it. So that sent me down a rabbit hole of just doing research on Kurt Russell doing this. And it's his highest grossing movie ever. And the Christmas Chronicles had it had something like over 1 million downloads, which would have, in box office kind of speak, would have smashed box office records. And so it got me thinking, what if Kurt Russell had said no to being Santa Claus, coming at like what Elizabeth said, which was like, we don't need any new Santa Claus. Like we have enough. What am I going to bring to the role? And so I connected that back to maybe you feel this way in your business when you want to maybe niche down or talk about something in your business. You're like, oh, well, someone else already said it, insert your business, Tim Allen, Santa Claus.
Hmm.
So I connected kind of this story from Elizabeth and I to business being like, hey, if you ever feel like it's already been said, remember it hasn't been said by you. Look at Kurt Russell's Santa Claus. So I try to connect things like that, like to take a slice of life moment and find some way that it can connect back to my audience.
So you take all these moments throughout your day, you just kind of document them and you're like, ooh, I could write like an email about this or create content over this.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so funny because I was on a show like last week, and one of the people listening in actually DM'd me and said, I'm trying to think about how this story thing applies to me. I'm thinking, because I had given some prompts, what's your favorite candy bar when you were a kid? What's the first concert you ever went to? So she said, yeah, well, there was this candy bar, actually my favorite candy bar. And she's writing this to me in the DMs. She says, was this certain candy bar? And it was weird because I didn't think I'd like it. My dad liked it, so I tried it, and then it became my favorite candy bar. And then she goes, oh, wait a second, I know how that could speak back to my audience. And then she's like, it's this idea of you're not sure if like blogging is for you, or you're not sure if this thing will actually help you in your business. And I was like, yeah, you just did it. You made the connection. So it's a lot easier than I think we think. I think you can make the connection back to your business.
For those of us who are not writers, how would you transition from like the story to the connection?
Yeah, like the non-awkward transition.
Totally.
Sometimes you can literally just say, like if you were telling a story about your day or whatever it was, you could just say, why am I telling you this? So you could have the story, and then the next line could be like, why am I telling you this? And then you could just go into and make the connection. So it doesn't seem, as you're like, oh, can I really say that? Yes. Sometimes you can say, so when this happened, when the above, story happened, it made me think of you. And
Uh-huh.
here's why. Or maybe you're inviting them to something, and maybe you're telling them a great story, like at the first concert you ever went to, you couldn't believe it, like Justin Timberlake came out, you lost your mind, he's the best. And then you could say, well, when you come over to my masterclass, it's going to be even better than that.
Uh-huh.
Right? So there's a couple ways that you can get into it. And some of my favorites are, why am I telling you this? This is going to be even better when you blank.
Hmm.
And there's a couple other ones as well, but just kind of those three you could get started with.
Okay, that's super good, super powerful. I'm taking
Yeah.
notes over here. I'm like,
Oh,
oh, I'm learning. This is
good.
awesome. Okay, so what is like one tip you would give your students that's really going to help them with their copy?
Yeah, it's definitely, I have my students make what's called a word closet for themselves.
A word closet.
A
Okay,
word
explain.
closet. So, if you're going to do photos, let's say for your brand, it's likely that whoever's doing the photos, or if you're having someone help you, they're going to say, hey, Rachel, what are your favorite colors? Go into your closet. What are the colors that you tend to gravitate towards? What do you like? Patterns? What do you not? What do you like? What do you not like? And I think it's the same. I think we're always like, how do we insert our personality? So I have my students create a word closet for themselves, the words and phrases they use the most. So then if they're ever feeling like they're just using the same old, like, I'm excited about this, but maybe in their word closet, I tend to say jazzed a lot. I tend to say I'm so jazzed about this. So that's in my word closet. So if ever I feel like, this is awesome, or I feel like I'm going to use a word that maybe other people have used, it's an opportunity for me to add my own kind of spice to it.
Oh, I like
So
that.
I tell my students, if you have your word closet, and sometimes you have to ask people, hey, what do I always say? Or just go back to emails you've written to a friend, or text messages when you're just totally yourself. Are there certain words, phrases, things that you use? And those can go in your word closet, so you can make sure that that's throughout your copy.
So your copy should sound like you're talking more to a friend than writing a
It,
business email.
100%. If you take nothing else away from today, it should 100% sound like you are writing to a friend, 100%. And, we've seen this. One of my students in the Copy Confidence Society, she did a whole kind of Black Friday special that came off of this giveaway. And it was the first time she'd ever written emails like this. And she runs like a boutique travel company with her husband in Italy. And they had something like 20 bookings or something from this, to go on their tour. She'd never had an email series kind of like this. And she was speaking to them like a friend and telling stories about, like, here's how I started this travel company. I came to Italy and I fell in love with my husband and we started this company together, and all these things that if you're picking a trip, you start to feel connected. You're like, oh, I got to go there. Oh, this is so cool. There's, you feel part of their story and you want to be part of it.
That's huge. I love
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, I don't know where you said this, but that you convert landing pages like over 60% or something crazy. So
Yeah.
how do you make that happen? What are some of like the essential elements of a landing page?
Yeah, the essential elements. So the first thing that you should definitely do, and I have my students do this for websites in the Write Your Website workshop, but a lot of people think like as copywriters, we're word wizards, and it's not, I'll take it, But we're really not. We're really just great organizers
Hmm.
of the word wizardry of your ideal client. So before you do anything, a landing page, no matter what it is, you should really get out and speak to your ideal client in an interview. The best thing you can do is hop on a Zoom call with someone that was a former client or could be like a prospect, and just ask them questions, because you're going to get those specific words, and all of that. Those things are perfect to put on a landing page so that people see themselves back.
Hmm.
So if it's about, let's say it's about weight loss or something, if you just say like lose weight and feel great, it kind of, you've seen it before, we're kind of immune to it, we brush over it.
Yeah.
But if it's to your ideal woman, let's say she's, maybe over 40 and she's, her kids are getting older, or she's gone through, divorce or loss of a parent. And now you can speak into those things and how weight loss has impacted her in that way. Well, now you've stopped the scroll. You've come across a landing page that's like, wow, this feels like you were speaking right to me.
Hmm.
But you do that because you've gone out and you've spoken to those people first. Sometimes we try to guess what it is, and I say, don't guess. Go find it from them. For example, I just worked on a website for a financial mentor for actors. So he specifically works with actors. And one of the things that I did when I asked his the prospects and people and asked a bunch of questions is, someone said, I really am trying to bridge the gap between when I book a gig as an actor and ordinary time when I come back to the city. How do I save for that? I literally took what that person said, and that's on his homepage. What if you could seal the gaps between gig life and ordinary time?
Hmm.
So an actor is going to see that and go, oh my gosh, yes, that's what I'm doing, as opposed to having some just kind of general language about saving money that doesn't speak specifically to this person.
That's huge. Is actually like taking their words and using that.
Yeah, don't change it. Don't change it. Put it right on there. I mean, of course, again, like as a copywriter, what we do is I'm able to see it and then organize it. Like I knew when this person said that, I'm like, oh, I know where this will go. It's great in this part of the homepage or whatever. But really just having those words and phrases of your ideal client. I had a student of mine in the Write Your Website workshop last summer, and she's a writer herself. And when she went out and did these interviews, someone said to her, it feels like you helped me get the confetti, out of my head and onto paper. And that became her tagline. And people love it. People love it. They're like, oh, because it creates that image in your brain. But if she had sat around, even though she's a great writer herself, she tried to come up with the tagline, it probably wouldn't have been that. So sometimes when you just go out and talk to people, they do the work for you.
What are some things that you ask when you're talking to those people?
Yeah. So you ask it, what, let's say it was around, copy. I'll say to somebody, what is, your number one struggle, with copy? And likely someone will tell me, I don't think I'm a good writer. I don't know what to say, and I'll ask them, so what would it look like if you were great at copy? How would it make you feel? What would it look like? And if someone says, I feel confident, then I want to break down, right? Confident. We want to break down the adjective into like that movie in the mind. So what, can you give me an example? If I'd say to you, Rachel, can you give me an example of what confident would look like for you? And then you'd say, yeah, writing an Instagram caption and, not stressing out about it and just pressing publish. And so then that's the thing that you want to take.
I
Because
love
sometimes
that.
people will give you the adjective, right? They'll say
Right.
excited, whatever. And so it's your job to just break down one more layer.
Just
And
ask a little bit more,
just a
get more.
little bit more to go, hey,
Yeah.
Rachel, I love that you'd be excited. Can you just break down like what's excited look like for Rachel?
Hmm.
And then you'd say, yeah, I can, go be with my son as opposed to spending all day creating content. And now I'm like, okay, now
There you
that's something
go.
I can use.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay. What are some of the biggest copy mistakes that you see?
People thinking they have to be professional and it not
Mm-hmm.
having their personality. Professional is that I said when our interview started today at, my time, 10 a.m. Eastern, that I was here a few minutes early, right? To make sure that my mic was working. That's professional, to be on time, to do what you say you're going to do. But professional is not, a kind of a stuffy email or a stuffy way of writing. So you have to put your personality. Most of the time, that's the number one thing I see. I see that it's devoid of all of the awesome things that very quickly in a conversation I can get someone to talk about. And I'm like, well, where is this on your website?
Yeah.
Where is this? So it's definitely um your personality. And I would say number two is it's being afraid to highlight your social proof, to say,
Uh-huh.
here's how I've helped other people, to really highlight your credibility. Sometimes we're like, you really got to put your Sasha Fierce jacket on. When Beyonce talks about when she goes on stage, she has that jacket.
Yeah.
You have to write your copy from that place, because my students will come to me and I'll be like, well, let me see some of your testimonials or what people have said. And Rachel, they're great. And they're just like, oh yeah, oh, I don't know. I don't want people to feel like, we're scared to kind of brag about ourselves. We've been told to keep it back. And in your copy, that's what's really going to stand out, is that credibility and personality combo.
Would you put those testimonials on like an opt-in page?
I put it everywhere. Yes.
Everywhere.
So even if it was like a quick opt-in page, let's say it was for a lead magnet or something quick, if someone's used that lead magnet and it's been great, you just need a little snippet below. Because then what it is, if you've made a headline or a promise at the top and you can back it up with something, just as the person is reading it in their mind, they're like, oh, okay, well, look at this person. It can just be a little line, It can be like, I'm writing better emails now after Maurice's, tips. And maybe that's my lead magnet, is this email thing. I just have your name, like Rachel. And then it just makes it, the person who's doing it just feel a little more comfortable to take that next step.
Totally.
And then ultimately it's just this snowball effect of you're helping more people. You're calling in people who are ready to have that kind of transformation. And it's really powerful.
For sure. I always look at like the testimonials and stuff. I actually bought an online program yesterday. It was like a 3rd trimester workout thing. And
cool.
to actually get me to buy it, I just like looked at the reviews basically of like the different testimonials on the page. I was like, okay, like I pretty much know what a workout program is going to look like for the most part, but what are people saying about it?
Yeah, totally.
And that's like what I went to first.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get them, and so some people say, okay, Marisa, what if I'm not in that place yet? What if I don't have those things yet? And it's likely that your own story, I always say like you kind of fall into 2 categories. There's the Atticus Finch, like from To Kill a Mockingbird, and there's practical magic. There's 2 categories. And so Atticus Finch is like in To Kill a Mockingbird when he says to Scout, you don't know another person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. So you've jumped around in their skin for a while. So some people fall into that category. I was once where you were. And so if you're an Atticus Finch, likely if you're a weight loss coach or a financial coach or something like that, likely maybe you've gone through these same struggles and now you've come out on the other side and you want to help other people do the same. So your story at first can really serve as a giant piece of social proof.
That's where I started. Like before I had testimonials with Pinterest, like before I launched my course, it was my story that I shared.
Right. And your story is incredible, right? So for some people before you had that, it's like being able to break that story down into the moments and how that transformation was for you. Yep. So that's still that social proof, especially if you fall into that Atticus Finch category.
Totally.
Yeah.
What are some like tools, resources, books that you would recommend to learn more about copy?
Gosh, I think my answer is going to be not so sexy to this, because the things that I read, I'm a voracious reader of regular books, like novels. I think a great way to become a better writer, to produce better copy, is to read memoirs and novels. Because especially memoirs, you're going to watch other people tell their stories.
Yeah.
And it's going to click something in your brain. Like, oh, okay, I know how I would tell that story, or her story reminded me of something that happened to me then. And it just helps you figure out how you kind of speak like a real person to your audience. So I'm a big reader of novels, of memoirs. And in terms of kind of, business books, I think the biggest one that's had I'll say big, and the big is in the name of the book, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Oh, that's a good one.
Huge for me. Huge.
So you spoke to our Activate ladies and you gave an analogy about friends that really stuck out to me. Can you share how Friends has to do with like your ideal clients and everything? Because I adored this. I was like, you were speaking my language.
Yeah. So this is not my own. So this is when I, because I created the Copy Chat last year, and then, each season we bring on 20 plus experts to, give one kind of doable tip to create copy that, connects and converts. So in Copy Chat 2.0, I had on Tarzan K and Sage Polaris, like 2 business besties, incredible copywriters. And this was the analogy that they had kind of come up with together that they apply to sales pages and launch emails. So this is theirs that they came up with together, which is that there's these buyer personas that are colors, red, green, yellow, and blue. And they applied them to characters from Friends. So Tarzan and Sage describe it as reds are your Monicas. They're the ones who they don't have time to read the whole email. They just want to know like, where's the button to click and to go. The blues are your Phoebes, and they're the ones who, hearing your story of transformation, Rachel, would make them be like, oh, I'm buying. There's a story, there's a moment of connection that they're like, yes, I'm signing up.
Hmm.
The yellows are your Joeys, and that's all the fun stuff. Where can you have like a GIF, or where can you have like the really specific language that makes them chuckle or be like, oh gosh, that's so me. And then your Rosses are the greens. And they're the ones who Tarzan and Sage describe. They're going to read your whole sales page. They're going to read all of it. And then there's still, I say like going to email you and be like, hey, there was another question I had actually. So when you're writing, you have to remember it. I think it's important to know which one you fall into.
Yeah.
Because that's likely going to inform how you feel about copy, how you feel about, because if you're a Monica and I can always tell if my students come to me and they say, oh, no, I hate these long sales pages, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, that's because you're a Monica.
Totally.
But it doesn't mean that all of your ideal dream clients and students are Monicas. They might be Rosses and they might need that.
So
They
how
might
do you
need all
make
those questions
sure
answered.
your copy appeals to everybody?
Yeah, so it won't always, like in an email setting, it might not always hit all four. And sometimes they might, but let's say in a sales page setting, having that, the bold promise, the headline at the top, having like a plain sentence of what it is. So I'll take the Copy Confidence, for example. It says the Copy Confidence Society, discover what to say and how to say it to magnetically attract your dream clients. And then it says a 6-month copy collaboration with copy coach and, lead generation expert, Marisa Corcoran. Then right below it, I have a testimonial that kind of backs up. And then right there, so kind of before that first scroll, there's a button that would take you to book a call with me. So now I've spoken to the Monicas right to the top. You know what it is, who it's for, I've backed it up, and there's a button. So I don't have to keep going if I don't want to.
Yeah.
Then the next kind of sections is for the other ones in the sense of like, you're really diving into, hey, here's what I know is going on right now. You're staring at a blank document. You signed up for a business, mentorship, but the copy module is like in the ethers of Kajabi somewhere. And your message is important, then you start to speak a little bit more into the Phoebes, be like, let me tell you my story. So now you've spoken to the Phoebes. Throughout it, I had them have like some fun jokes, some like really like, language for the Joeys. And then it kind of keeps going. I make sure that I have my FAQ section for the Rosses. I make sure that I really say what the features are, what the deliverables are. I'm not a Ross at all. I sign up for stuff. I'm a Phoebe. I'm a Phoebe. Like if I connect to your story, I'll take out my credit card and buy. And then my husband will say, well, when's it meeting? And I'm like, oh, I have no idea when we're meeting. I don't know any of the details, know? So it's important to know for me as a Phoebe, it's important to know, okay, I need to make my deliverables sometimes a little clearer.
Yeah.
Because it's just not something that I think about.
It's a good reminder because I'm like a Monica Phoebe. Like I'm in between the two. Like I'm someone who I take like massive action. I act fast. I don't have to usually think about it a lot. I don't need to know all the details, but I like to read a few testimonials to make sure like it helps me feel like more secure. But I don't care about like the FAQs or anything like that. And so it's hard for me to remember that there are people, like 25% of the people out there need all those details to be able to really make a decision. So I think that's a really good reminder.
Yeah, it was one of our favorites from CopyChat 2.0. People love that. And in such a brilliant way to describe it that Tarzan and Sage have done, because it makes it so easy to understand.
Yeah.
Which, then it's easier to go, oh, I know why. I get it now, you know? Mm-hmm.
What's something I haven't asked about copy that I should?
What's something you haven't asked about copy that you should? I would say maybe around subject lines, because I know that trips people up.
Yeah,
would you agree?
Yeah, totally.
So I think, let's say you tell a great story in the email and you find a way with one of these non-awkward, transitions, transition it back. If you don't have a great subject line, then you lose out on people even reading it.
Yep.
So I like to separate subject lines into 3 categories. So the number one is the Cosmo category. And that means that it doesn't have to be Cosmo. It can be any really magazine, Cosmo, Women's Health, Shape, Real Simple. Those are Runner's World, Golf Digest can be great for this too. And the cover of magazines are basically set up to hold you, to get you to buy it, to keep your attention, to get you to open the magazine, very quickly. You're in a grocery store. So that would be looking at those kind of Cosmo covers or Women's Health or something. Take what those things that it says in the front, 7 steps to your best third trimester workout ever. Swipe that, put it in a Google document. And then when you go to do a subject line, be like, okay, how could I turn that into a subject line for me, for my business? Maybe you could change it to something about Pinterest.
Yeah.
So you can a lot of times swipe from the cover of magazines because they were set up for that. So that's the Cosmo one.
Okay.
Number 2, I call it the Darlene and Clark method. And why I call it that is when my husband and I first moved to Atlanta, we met a couple at a brewery, and the wife worked inside the husband's business, and they lived in this huge home. And she told me, his office is on the top floor and I'm on the bottom, on the basement. It might've been flipped, but you get what I'm saying. And I said to her, well, then what are you just screaming to him all day long? And she's like, no, I email him. And I say, read this. It told you so. Look at this. See, I told you this was the thing. So that's like the Darlene and Clark subject line, which is like, read this.
That's so easy. I'm
Yeah.
going to write that down.
Or just like, OMG, or check this out. Or can you believe it? Or are we going? Should we go to this? Things like the Darlene and Clark method. And then number 3, I call it kind of the international man of mystery, which is wherever maybe you put 2 things together that don't likely go together. And people are like, what? I have to open it just to see. So I wrote an email recently or a couple months ago about how my husband always has a really great list when he goes to Target. He knows, like, I'm here to get paper towels, this, and then I'm out. Not me. My brain is always just like filled. I'm too busy. And I told the story about how I'd watched the 2nd season of Fleabag, the show that was on Amazon. And in it, she like loves this. She has a crush on this priest at her church, and she calls him Hot Priest. So my subject line for the email, so I connected it back to the business somehow. So my subject line was paper towels and hot priests. So it's like 2 things that you're like, wait, what is she wait, what? And then you click on it because you're like, I want to know what she means. So I called it like the international man of mystery. Oh. Like, where could you put, one time I had like a photo shoot nightmare, and then in parentheses I put, and duck walks. And you had to open it up to find out what was I talking about.
Yeah. So
those are kind of 3 like quick categories that can help you create better subject lines.
It totally piques your curiosity, and you're like, what is she
what
talking
happened
about? Yeah.
What was her photo shoot nightmare, and why are there ducks?
And do you do anything with like the pre-header?
Yeah. So I like to take, if there's a section of your email that maybe you want to make sure is like, you can always move that little tiny section up to the pre-header, or I just like to have fun with that, because you don't want it to maybe just be that, if not, because it's going to default to just the, hey, Rachel, that first sentence.
Yeah.
And the also thing that I would tell people is, even if you're worried about the pre-header, how can you make that opening sentence? I call it like a hook 'em opener. So that hook 'em opener would be enough for them to want to open anyways. And I always say, just drop people into the moment, like where you're at.
Could you give an example?
Yes. So if I said, about the hot priest and paper towels, I think I started it by saying, I always, talk to strangers, and my husband's always trying to stop me from talking to strangers. Like, I drop them just like in that moment in time, as opposed to starting off the email with, hey, Rachel, today I want to talk to you about, or I got thinking about blank, as opposed to drop them right into, in the acting world, we call like, what makes today different than any other day? You know what we'd always have to say about whatever play we were in. What makes today different than any other day? Well, today is the day they're going to fall in love. Today's the day that Romeo and Juliet meet, So it's what makes today different than any other day, and then dropping people right in that moment in that first sentence.
Got it. And then going through the story.
Yep, going through the story.
And then do you like what do you do for like a specific call to action? What do you say for those call to actions? And
yeah, so one.
Just one.
But okay. Try to do one if you can, because what really happens is, and this is most time, of course, there's instances where of course you can break the rules, and you should, but I think it helps people like one focus, one. So before I even write the email, I have my students say at the top, what's your intention? What do you want them to do with this email? Is it click over to the blog? Is it engage with you? Is it register for the masterclass? Know that before you even start. And that's an acting thing too. If you and I were in a scene together, before I started the scene, I would have to tell my acting teacher, okay, what I want from Rachel is, for her to ask me to be on her podcast. You have to like say what the what the intention is.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you're writing the email, you know, this is all leading towards the blog. So then you can say to them, you know, and when this happened, it made me think of you. And I actually wrote about it in this blog today. So click over here to read the blog.
Hmm.
Or, you know, and this made me think, you know, about my Kurt Russell email. You know, what are those moments where you think it's been said? So you're not being bold in your copy. Hit reply and tell me, you know, so there was just an engagement one. Or, you know, you can tell someone, come on over to the master class, or, you know, I made a little, you know, PDF about this, come on over. So make it very clear what that call to action is.
And actually tell them what to do.
Oh my gosh, tell them exactly what to do. Click here to, it doesn't mean that you can't have other ones, you know, maybe a little link that's like, and I wrote about it, and maybe wrote about it is hyperlinked to the thing,
Yeah.
but definitely have one clear, click here to what you want them to do, or hit reply and tell me, and tell them what you want them to reply back with.
I think a lot of people are just too vague, and they're like assuming that people know the action they want them to take, but you have to actually tell them.
No, people don't, we don't know. Like
Yeah.
our brains are so, we're like, what? So if you have that clear hyperlink in there, then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay. You know, and then I say, repeat it again in a PS. A PS is your best friend.
Okay, so what are some things we should put in the PS?
Oh, PSs are my favorite. So PS sometimes is a great way. Let's say you have one of a longer email. Let's say you've written like an email to the Rosses that day. You know, maybe you've hit all 4, so it's a little bit longer. You know, in the PS, you can have that like TLDR, like, hey, too long, didn't read. Here's the gist.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm open doors. So let's say you told a story and you were opening the doors, you know, to work with you. And it was this whole thing about, you know, Pinterest and then in the PS, it might just be TLDR, hey, the doors are open. Click here to get all the info. So sometimes that's a great way to just like quickly summarize in the PS. The PS can also be a way to kind of expand on another, you know, tell like another tiny story.
Yeah.
It can also be a place, especially like for the Joeys, right? A fun like GIF or something could go in the PS.
Yeah.
You know, another little joke or something. But your PS can really be a great way, because a lot of times people just scroll right down to the PS.
No, for sure. I know I do a lot of times. So it's like you
Because
got to
you're
put something
Monica.
there. Exactly.
Right. So if someone had the TLDR to you, you're more likely to go, oh, that's what this is about? Okay, well, let me go check it out and see if I'm interested.
Yep.
As
Totally.
opposed to if somebody didn't have that TLDR PS.
Then they'd make me read the whole email, and I'd be like,
And
I don't got time for this.
yeah, and you'd miss it. You'd miss out. Yeah,
For
totally.
sure. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
Gosh, what does it mean to me to make an impact? I would say, you know, for me, my biggest thing has been to be able to give back. So I knew that I wanted to have generosity kind of built into my business from the start. And I encourage my students to do so. So for like the copy chat, which is coming out in February, well, it is February now, but February 17th, we have a give back component. So you can upgrade to the copy chat kit, which gives you lifetime access to the interviews. There's a workbook. I do a bonus class, but we're donating all the profits this time to an organization called the Headstrong Project. And they work with post 9/11 military vets on the mental health care that they need and deserve. So they provide cost-free and confidential mental health care. So they're on this quest to eradicate vet suicide and really, you know, help end the kind of stigma that we have on mental health for so many vets who come home that, you know, are physically fine, but they're never the same because of things that they've witnessed, or PTSD, traumatic brain injury. So for me, that has been part of what I wanted to do from day one. And we did another give back at Christmas time. So for me, it's being able to go, okay, yes, I'm making this money and that's awesome. And I've been able to transform my life with my husband and our family. Okay, how can I do this for other people? So to me, it's like, can you have a give back component built into your business?
I love that. Absolutely love that. And that's such a huge win-win, because your students are going to get success with the tools that you're providing for them. And then you're getting to help people at the same time.
Yeah, we say help your copy and a human.
I love it.
Yeah.
Where can we connect with you?
The best place to connect with me is on the Copy Chat Facebook group. That's where I show up and show up often. So the Copy Chat Facebook group is perfect. You can always also go to my website, which is marisacorcoran.com. And Instagram is my other jam. Instagram is my other love. And there I am at M as in Mary, T as in Thomas, O-N-I, M Tony.
We'll put it all in the show notes, so it's
Yeah.
all good. Cool.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your tips and knowledge with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rachel.